In 1967, the United States Army loaned to the Australian Army, under standardization agreement, 2 M551 General Sheridan armored fighting vehicles. These vehicles were to undergo extensive tropical trials in the rainforest area near Innisfail in North Queensland. The purpose of the trials was to assess the performance capabilities of the vehicles in a typically tropical environment. Vehicles were unloaded at Melbourne, Victoria, so that a preliminary assessment of them could be made prior to their overland journey to North Queensland. During crew familiarization, the soldiers were taught to erect the swimming barrier, which would be used in later trials. Amphibious trials were conducted at Lake Epilock, Victoria, affording the crew some knowledge of the vehicle's capabilities in this environment. Sheridan proved to be a good swimmer and quite at home in these surroundings. At the Armoured Centre, Puckapunyal, Victoria, trials personnel were instructed in the use of the secondary armament associated with the equipment. Although many of the soldiers had prior knowledge of the weapons, it was essential that they became experts in their use. In December 1967, the vehicles were transported to the Tropical Trials Unit at Cowley Beach near Innisfail, North Queensland. Extensive automotive trials of the vehicles were carried out during the wet season on a variety of terrains. Of the natural obstacles encountered, gradients appeared to be the most challenging to Sheridan. Comprehensive firing trials were conducted on the Sheridan's secondary and main armament weapon system. Detailed firings of the shillelagh missile and the conventional 152mm combustible case ammunition were undertaken at the Cowley Beach range. Sheridan can fire 8 smoke projectors simultaneously, producing effective smoke screens to the required standard of the Australian Army. To assess the physiological responses and the ability of the crew to operate as a unit under tactical and tropical environmental conditions, battlefield day trials were conducted. With the vehicles running on jungle tracks for periods up to 26 hours, the crews were subjected to closed down and opened up operations. With the hatches closed, conditions inside the vehicle remained within acceptable limits, despite restricted air movement. Crew performance tests were carried out every 4 hours during the 26-hour period. A slalom course was used to test drivers' reactions. After each run on the slalom course, checks on the gunner's response and coordination in using the secondary armament were made. For safety reasons, live ammunition was not carried throughout all of the battlefield day. However, small controlled quantities were passed to the gunner prior to the time of firing. Actual tactical conditions were simulated at all times. Performances during this segment of the trials proved to be within satisfactory limits. Weather conditions during the trials were not as severe as expected, with an average daylight temperature of 79 degrees Fahrenheit and average humidity of 79%. One complete replenishment of ammunition and fuel was required during each battlefield day. This task was performed under simulated tactical conditions, with a secret rendezvous being selected each day and the crews performing their tasks with as little noise as possible. On a battlefield day, the Sheridans were required to travel a minimum of 100 miles, of which 40% was to be cross-country. However, due to the nature of the testing areas, it was not always possible to achieve this aim. Target acquisition tests were conducted to establish the ability of the crew to acquire targets under varying conditions. Wooden targets were arranged in various arrays, but with a constant frontal arc of 60 degrees. After standing stationary in daylight for 30 minutes, orders to proceed under direction to the acquisition area were given. Using optical sights only, some difficulty with acquisition was experienced. Physiological tests were performed at given periods during the battlefield day trials. The tests were to determine the habitability of the vehicle in a hot, wet environment and the subsequent effect on the crew. Medical staff checked the crew's pulse rates, body temperatures, and sweat rates. Despite the fact that the crew had not slept during the 26-hour period and every attempt had been made to harass them, they appeared to be in good spirits. Acoustic tests to determine possible hearing damage caused by continued exposure to tracked vehicle noise over an extended period were conducted. These tests indicated that some changes required to the CVC helmet to afford greater protection. Physiological measurements indicated that the crew were not severely stressed as a result of the conditions to which they were subjected during battlefield day trials. Turret traverse trials were conducted on Sheridan to check the performance and reliability of the turret system. Measurements were made to determine the maximum traverse rates and the magnitude of the electrical imbalance in the control systems. Hand traverse proved to be a difficult operation and was considered suitable only for emergency conditions. The commander's cupola power traverse performed extremely well. It was found that the contact rings and brushes must be cleaned and reset periodically to ensure efficiency. Measurements of the maximum traverse and elevation rates showed no significant variation on either vehicle during the trials. Very little electrical unbalance was detected in the control systems. Apart from failures to the magnetic clutches and the servo motors, the performance of the turret system was satisfactory. Tests were staged to assess visibility afforded the crew both in the closed down and opened up modes. Measurements of the range of vision were taken so that limiting features could be assessed. results were subsequently plotted as polar diagrams. Comparatively little maintenance was required on the engines during the trials. Removal of Sheridan's power pack did not present many difficulties. Blockage to the radiator by the ingress of jungle debris resulted in overheating, causing engine failure on one occasion. Despite the fitting of wire mesh screens over the air intake grills, this problem continued. Cleaning of the air filter was easily achieved. The recoil mechanism of the main armament was replaced twice. However, one of the replacements subsequently developed an excessive oil leak. Sheridan's running gear performed satisfactorily, and maintenance was comparatively simple. 10 new drive sprockets and 5 new support wheels were fitted during the trials. Apart from minor damage, the operation of the tracks was satisfactory, and their life is at least comparable with that of similar AFVs. In June 1968, the Sheridans had completed their tropical trials and were transferred overland by Department of Supply to the Army Design Establishment, Victoria, for maintenance evaluation and finalization tests. On return to Army Design Establishment, cooling tests were conducted to examine the engine's overheating problems experienced during the trials. These tests were conducted under controlled conditions of temperature and load within the mechanical laboratories. At the conclusion of the maintenance evaluation, the vehicles were prepared for return shipment to the United States Army. The Sheridan vehicles, as evaluated by Army Design Establishment, were not downgraded when operated in a tropical environment and performed in a generally satisfactory manner under all trials conditions.